delighted to be back with part 7 of my Books for Art Inspiration series. My name is Lee Foster Wilson and I'm an artist and illustrator from Cornwall in the UK. And in this series I have been talking about books from my own collection that my husband and I have been collecting for 20 odd years. They are all books that I find inspiring for my art and process, and I hope you will too. Today I'm talking about two British artists. One is a prolific collage artist and printmaker. The second one, this doesn't give much away, is a printmaker and pattern maker. And then the third book is this little one, which doesn't have many pictures in it as such, but it is an inspiring little book if you are looking at getting your work out into the world. So let's start with this beautiful little book, which is Marthe Hearld's Workbook. This is a new book to me, which I purchased earlier this year. I've talked on my channel before about having a bit of a block in the latter half of last year, and one of the ways I managed to get out of it was to play around with a very hands-on approach to art making, which for me turned up in the form of collage. I discovered what a fun process it is, and at that time I was really drawn to the work of Marthe Hearld, who's a British collage artist and printmaker from Yorkshire. I've followed his work for a while now on social media, but something in it just really struck me earlier this year, and that's how much movement and freedom he manages to get into his work. It's something that I'm constantly inspiring to with my own art. So this book is a real deep dive into his life and work and inspirations, and there are little snippets throughout of what he was thinking when making certain pieces, like here, which I find absolutely fascinating, because sometimes we can look at a piece of art and like it for what it is, but knowing just a little bit more can just bring it to life even further. So going back to the beginning, it follows the early stages of his career with this, with this lovely introduction. Here we are. I love all these bits, the kind of behind the scenes imagery. There he is, the man himself. So yeah, it has this lovely introduction, and to me he seems like somebody who definitely lives as if he's inside one of his own artworks. Hang on, where is it? Just look at this creative living space. It's full of magpie treasures and art. You can't fail to be inspired being around all this ephemera, really, can you? So much to draw on, so many inspirations. So when we get to the art section, it talks about collage and printmaking. And it starts off with his lithographs, which I would confess is a process that I know nothing about. But looking at these, I think I'd really like to find out more. They have such a beautiful hand-drawn quality to them, and kind of printmakerly all at the same time. I don't know if printmakerly is a word, but I'm using it, I'm going with it. And I love the layering of colours to create the extra unexpected colours. I used to do a lot of screen printing, and that was something I always really liked about the screen printing process. That layering, it's really makes things unexpected, but also if you learn how to control it, you can really use it as part of your visual language. So then it moves on to his liner cuts. There he is at work. And then, look at these. It moves through the various themes that inspire his work. So we have farmyard, lots of cockerels and hens, ducks and geese, little sheep making an appearance, and a white horse. If you've watched my previous video talking about the work of Eric Villiers, we look at white horses in that as well. I'm not sure if this one's in the field or on the hill, but it's a white horse nonetheless. And then we have the romantic eye, so twinkly, but at the same time they just have this classic British countryside feel to them. I love these ones. Down in the undergrowth. That's where I like to be. I love these owls. And it moves on to the seashore and rivers. I especially like this little snippet about this salmon in the Thames piece of work. It says, "Salmon returned to the Thames. This print, made to coincide with the St Jude's in the City exhibition of 2010 at London's Bankside Gallery, was inspired by an item on the radio about the improved water quality in the Thames and the possibility of salmon once again spawning in the river's upper reaches. The romantic notion of such majestic fish swimming past the Houses of Parliament suggested a fantastic combination of images. I got so carried away by the compositional possibilities that my fish are actually swimming out to sea rather than upstream. However, a sense of dynamic movement was of paramount importance, and elements moving from left to right always appear more animated. The pages from a 1920s art journal were used to suggest the texture of the buildings." That's what I really like about this book. It's just got these little bits that kind of explain the work to you. And sometimes you don't get that in art books. And it just really jumped out at me as being really valuable in this one. So we move through the rivers and we get to look at these work in progress. Imagine getting this in the post. How beautiful. So we go into allotments. So much energy and movement here. Birds and beasts. I particularly love his depictions of hares. And some more exotic creatures here, not all British. Little mice and rats, little rat eating some cheese. Don't think anyone wants to see that on their cheese board, do they? I love the swans as well. So yeah, keeping on moving through, there's just so much in here. Oh, and this marine life section actually really inspired me to get started with my current body of work, which was all about fish in the ocean and rock pools. So it goes through all of these. It's quite a thick book, so I won't show you page by page. But it's all just so beautiful, and I particularly love these winter ones. Where's my favourites? Oh, this is beautiful. Look at that. I love here how he's used spray paint and negative space to make this magical, dusky imagery. And I think perhaps it's one of the things I love most about his work, really. It's the experimental feel it has. Like nothing is off limits, and the willingness to just try it and see. Perhaps that's what keeps it all so lively. And then Natalie, it talks about the artist as a designer and illustrator, which from my own experience I know can be a bit of a push and pull as an artist, between making work that really sings to you, but also creating with a commercial head on. That's like a whole different subject, but I found this section really inspiring, how he manages to create these beautiful objects and illustrations and wallpapers, but has also managed to keep it entirely in his own style. And this is something that I struggle with personally, at least I feel like I do. I don't know if it comes across in my work. And some ceramics. It's a busy shelf. And objects too. Oh, I'd love to create some 3D objects, just paint some wood. And this lovely little diorama as well, I guess. Is that what it's called, a diorama? Correct me if I'm wrong. Anyway, I love this book. It's such an energetic little box of delights. And the essays alongside the art have that amazing ability to make you just want to go and make art. Like that feeling that anything is possible. My favourite kind of book. So that's that one. Next we have The Making of Marthe Armitage, Artist and Pattern Maker. This one is equally lovely, though in a more kind of restrained and sophisticated way, I think. It's all about, as I said, Marthe Armitage. I'm not sure I'm saying that right. It could be Marthe or Marthe, but I'm going to stick with Marthe. Again, correct me if I'm wrong, please. She's another British artist who predominantly works in printmaking for wallpaper and furnishings. And apparently she's in her 90s now and still working, I believe, which I think is really inspiring in itself. I want to still be making art and creating stuff when I'm in my 90s. So this is a gorgeously produced book. I don't know if you can see, you can see this one. It has this gorgeous embossing on the front. But as well as that, I don't know if, it is picking it up in the light, has this kind of very fine, almost hair-like cat hair to illustrate as well. It's just beautiful. And that is all over. So yeah, beautifully produced. It starts with a lovely foreword from her daughter, who she works alongside, and then an introduction all about Marthe, and then pages and pages. There she is. She looks very friendly, I think. But there's pages and pages of snippets of her life and sketches and peeks at patterns and prints in progress. I just love this kind of world building around an artist's work. I find it just really inspiring, both for my art and my life. It's beautiful. So the images are interspersed with essays about her work and her life, but the main bulk of the book is devoted to the work itself. And honestly, it feels a little bit like being invited into her studio. So the writing encompasses essays by her friends and family, as well as an interview, but also at the back, Marthe's own writing. Anyway, I won't be reading any of it out, but it is here. And it's got this real scrapbook vibe to it, which I really like in an art book. It's kind of less formal and more inviting and fun. Beautiful drawing. And her work itself is just beautiful. Let me find some sketches. Find some of her prints. Look at that. So lush and dense. To me, it feels really deliberately composed in contrast to Mark Hearld's work, but you can see from her sketches that it starts out really intuitively. And then, as is her style, she pares it back to make the repeats. And I love how it's a real observation of nature, a mishmash of all the different shapes you find alongside each other in a garden. And then there's works like this one, where you have this human element. And also here, we have this juxtaposition of man-made with the columns and the windows, but also just a rampaging garden. Like you can never keep nature back. It's always trying to come and take over, which it should do really, shouldn't it? I love this Italian garden. I also feel very inspired looking at these because it positions her work alongside her sketches and it brings home the value in slow process. All the sketching, the tracing, the line work, and then the process of perfecting layers of prints. It really lets the work speak for itself, this book, I think. It shows you all of the process. And printmaking is such a time-consuming thing, but the result is so good. And all of these have such a timeless quality to them. A connection to nature, but also a love of the formal garden too. At the back here, there are some of her favourite prints from her collections. This one's got a more fantastical feel, so it's got kind of old style boats and water creatures, castles and fortresses. And I love these, the walled garden, but looking through to these vistas of the countryside and the cobweb, finding the beauty in everything nature has to offer, the things that you might think, oh, yuck, a spider, but actually look how beautiful. And this one is another one in the same vein of the things I talked about before, about nature just taking over. There's these statues in the garden, but the wildlife and the trees are branching around them, covering them up a little bit. Yeah, I love this work. I just feel like the sun is always shining in these gorgeous drawings and prints. Also another life drawing as well. It's a beauty. So that was the making of Marthe Armitage, artist and pattern maker. And lastly, we have this little chap. This is Show Your Work by Austin Kleon. Kleon describes himself as a writer who draws, and after reading this, I'm keen to start describing myself as an artist who illustrates. I feel it sums everything up just so much better. So I really like this little book. I have one of his others too, called Steal Like an Artist, but I decided to focus on this one today, as self-promotion is something I've always flip-flopped around on, sometimes having bursts of energy for it and sometimes just wanting to hibernate and shut off from the world. So I decided to reread this and enjoyed it the second time around, so I thought I'd share it with you too. And even though it was published in 2014, it still feels very relevant to today's world. There's a lot of really great advice in here. So you can see on flip through that it's not as visually appealing as the other two, but it has a graphic style all of its own with little diagrams. Of course, I can't find one now. There are diagrams. Here we go. Hoarder, contributor, spammer, sharing. And also these little collage pages from books that have the meanings picked out in the words that he's left uncovered. Comments outnumber ideas. Or why can I never find the things I want when I want them? Anyway, you'll see them as I flick through. So the book goes through 10 sections, and the focus is on how having networks is really important for you, but also for what you can bring to other creatives too. And it starts off by talking about how important it is to be open to the world and eager to be an active part. And this is the first section. You don't have to be a genius. Find a genius. So yeah, communication. And he also talks about reading the obituaries, which is not something I've done personally, but he talks about it in a way of reading the life stories of other people to remind you that everyone starts off as an amateur before they find their way, but that also at some point it will all come to an end and then we don't actually have all the time in the world, so we may as well get on with it and make the most of it. And so, yeah, he describes reading the obituaries as a near-death experience for the rest of us in the context of people who do have actual near-death experiences, kind of suddenly having this newfound propulsion in their life. So he also talks in section 2 about taking people behind the scenes, which reminds me of the previous 2 books I've shown you today. It's so interesting to see a little bit behind the curtain, and another way of sharing creatively without sharing finished work all the time, I think. The work is all that's happened in the day. It's a process, not a thing. I like that. But yeah, he's just saying that the internet opens it right up and makes it much easier than it used to be in the past to connect with other people in this way and share work in progress. Process is messy, it is, and it's also really interesting, personally, I think anyway. It's just a really inspiring and proactive little book, full of reminders that we all have at least something in our day. There we go, share something small every day. And it goes on about finding time in the nooks and crannies and not to lose ourselves in the internet in the process. And it talks about how to get intentional with sharing our work and the fine line and the fine balance between sharing and oversharing, not to become human spam. And it's full of these just inspiring quotes and little snippets of things that just make you just think and go, oh yeah, almost like not telling you, but reminding you of what you already knew in a funny kind of way. And it isn't just about showing your work online either. He talks about how to converse about your work, showing it in conversations and in person. And again, it's not becoming human spam or a bore. It's a to and fro of listening and sharing and supporting others. So here's the storytelling. Kurt Vonnegut's story graphs. Beginning, end, bad fortune, good fortune. He talks about the hero's journey as well, which is a classic story structure. And he also has a section which I really enjoyed about pitching, which I never considered as a storytelling form, but he says pitching is basically you telling the story without an ending, and the idea is that the person you're pitching to is going to help you write that ending. So here we go, talk about yourself at parties. This is the bit where it's like talking about your work, but also kind of conversing with people, not just going on and on at them about what you do. Ask them what they do too. And somewhere in there you might find that connection. And then in the latter stages of the book, he talks about negativity, because in sharing, there will always be some negativity that will come your way. Those people who are just unable to just walk away and accept that something isn't for them, and they always just have to leave something negative, or even there are people out there who take joy in doing that. Those trolls. Don't feed the trolls. You have to kind of learn how to take the punches and hit the block button sometimes. But yeah, there's that. And there's also a section on selling out, not to hobble yourself in the name of keeping it real. And I like this bit from the perspective of a professional artist, as it is really realist. You have to make money, but you can also say no to jobs that don't light a fire, and find that balanced. And paying it forward. He says here, when you have success, it's important to use any dough, clout or platform you've acquired to help along the work of people you've helped get you where you are. So always credit, always kind of give people that little kudos that they've given you too. And then the last section is about sticking around, staying with it and evolving and changing to do the thing that you love to do, so you can keep doing it throughout your life. It's a really inspiring read, this one. And as well as all the advice on sharing, it touches on aspects of creativity too, which, as you know, I'm a big fan of, and how to keep things fresh so that you want to share what you've been doing. And I can highly recommend this if, like me, you blow hot and cold with these things. It's a little kick up the arse, really. So there we go. 3 quite different books, but also 3 that have themes of freedom and creativity, sharing ideas and process and snippets of behind the scenes. I hope you liked them as much as I do, and if you did, please do like this video and subscribe to my channel. It all really helps. See you next time.